Welcome to another episode of Not Quite Strangers. My name is Valerie Hope. I am your host. And this is an opportunity every moment that we do this podcast is to bring two people together who do not know one another and have a meaningful conversation. So hopefully for you, this inspires some curiosity, builds your own connection, not only to yourself, but to the people around you. And I like to shake up the way strangers interact. So this is a kind of a model, an experiment of that. And today we have two very special guests. So I'm going to start by first introducing Karen Romestan. Karen, you are my reverend pastor. I would have said former, but I don't think there's a former. I think once you are, period. And at Unity Church here in Dallas, and you've recently relocated, and you have been a wonderful guide on my own spiritual path. And I know when we've talked most recently, you're sharing some of your own, your passion and advocating for the LGBTQIA plus community. And I thought, oh, we need to talk about this on the podcast. Who might I invite to connect with Karen about this? And then ding, 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 Lindsay. So Lindsay, you are a person, first of all, you and I met at the Berkeley Executive Coaching Institute, where you're also a certified coach. You coached me in your final exam, actually. And I was like, Lindsay's amazing. And the two of you have both been on my Time to Come Alive podcast. And we had beautiful conversations about your life and your journey. And Lindsay, you shared a lot with us. Actually, I would say my greatest honor, and I've told this to several people, is that you shared that interview with your parents, where you hadn't talked that much about your experience, right? Being non-binary. And I was so honored. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And I thought, okay, Lindsay, you and Karen, I think would have a fascinating conversation about this because one, you're so open to share. You are so educational to me, and I'm sure to others who watch that podcast. And I can't imagine that this would be any different, not only for education. That was the purpose, is not education, but if people learn something, bonus. So with that said, welcome to the two of you to the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Valerie.
Yay.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I ask all my guests, why did you say yes to meeting a stranger on a podcast?
Well, Valerie, I know you, and you're so interesting in how you bring people together. And if you thought that Lindsay and I would have a connection and a dynamic conversation, I was all for it.
Okay. Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, similar, the people that you interact with tend to be extremely awesome. I watched some of the other, streams that you've put up, and, it's definitely an honor to be one of the folks that you talk to. And based on the conversation last time, it was just such an engaging conversation. I was looking forward to meeting whoever you were going to bring in to just have a great conversation.
Yes. Awesome people abound. I will say I have been so blessed by having awesome people around me. And I want to create spaces where more awesome people come together. So thank you both for saying yes to this. I'd like to start off by asking you, one of you, to ask your first question. I've asked both of you to bring some questions. I want to take a little bit of a backseat for the first question like this. So who has a question they'd like to start off?
Lindsay, you want to start? Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So my question is, if you shut your eyes and you think of the word connection, what do you experience? What do you see? What do you think?
Oh my gosh, it was so visual. Atoms and molecules all connected. And I had a tingling sensation from my fingertips to my toes. I guess that was connecting all of that, inside me. And thank you for that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's funny. I had a similar experience. As soon as you said the word connection, that's such an important word to me. I literally felt this wave of warmth wash over me and some tingling sensation as well.
Yeah, that's definitely, I find that when I need a moment to ground myself, a lot of times I have to shut my eyes to do it. And it just is like a nice stretching out and just expansion of energy and just bringing back in the people that you either know or don't know. So I was like, okay, that seems like a good place to start.
This is what we're doing. And look at this. Another thing I want to bring up is the fact that it's virtual, that we are still able to experience a connection virtually. I know, especially the preponderance of virtual connections or activities and meetings, et cetera, during the pandemic, people were doubtful that you could achieve the same level of connection with people. But in my experience, has actually been, if not the opposite, right? Definitely, there's no way that you miss connecting people. It does have to be more intentional, right? We all have to be even more present, but I do find that it's as powerful sometimes as meeting in person, if done well.
Yeah, agreed.
What would you guys say to that as far as, go ahead, Karen. Sounds like.
Oh my gosh, I agree. It's because we're energy, and it doesn't matter where we are, that energy permeates space. And when we show up consciously and on purpose for each other, it happens. That happens.
Energy.
Yeah.
Lindsay, why did you ask that question? What was it about that question that inspired?
I think that, I looked over all of, the icebreaker ideas, and I do a lot of, icebreakers in my everyday. And I think that meeting people in a virtual space, something that I've kind of had the honor to experience, is being able to connect with folks all over the world that I would have never met, if I'd just been going about my everyday life and hadn't kind of like stepped inside, the, four walls of a home and then stepped outside into that virtual space. So I feel like it's something that is very active, that's very much about what we are going to be experiencing. And I love the fact that you use the word intentional, because I use that all the time when it comes to, connecting virtually. It's one of those things where if you set that intention and you reach out, you can have such powerful connections and moments with people that, maybe, some of the things, meeting strangers for the first time, feeling safe to do so, because in person, sometimes, I'll wallflower, and like the connection of energy. I love that, because I've done guided meditation with folks via Zoom before, like over the past couple of years, when we just needed to refocus and just, be here. So it's something, it's all around you, even when you're inside of a little box.
Yeah. Karen, I see you nodding a lot along. What's coming up for you?
Well, yeah, it's that intentionality of this moment, and everything that we do, from brushing our teeth to, meeting that stranger. That I'm with you, Lindsay. In my life, I identify as an introvert, and groups that I have to step into, strangers, is not my most comfortable place to be. So meeting on the screen, there is some safety there too. And, knowing you, Valerie, and how you support a space makes it very safe. And so to be out of that comfort and still feel okay about it, it's not easy.
Yeah.
So
I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's funny that both of you pointed to this idea of introversion. I did a workshop recently where that question was asked. The purpose of the workshop was to help people identify who they can connect with, right? Expanding the circle of allies and being intentional about who they reached out to. And one of the questions that came up is like, hey, as introverts, it's exhausting to think about. I'm going to expand my circle. And so they had asked, what are some ways that I can protect my energy and also connect with people intentionally? So I asked the two of you that question, since we're on this topic.
Oh, wow. Uh, Ironically, before I became a minister, I was in sales and marketing, which is so not introvert. So I would literally have to set goals for myself because I'm very goal oriented in life. So I would have to go to networking meetings and I would set very specific goals of what I was to accomplish at that meeting. And because it was my work, I held myself very accountable to accomplish those goals. And it might mean to meet one new person that I've never met before and schedule a follow-up appointment with them. So it was very practical and very focused goals. And that's what helped me in my work world. Socially, I still am awkward in social settings where I don't know people, and I feel all the feels and the stress and the anxiety. So I kind of take a, a less stringent version of that goal with me to a social setting. You know what? Just say hello to one person and know their name.
No follow-up, not yet.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Lindsay, I see you nodding along. What's going on
Yeah.
your side?
I can definitely, resonate with that. I'll say like, a work context, like, by day, I do a lot of facilitation with small groups, with large groups. And I have done a lot of, performances in my life, like pretty much it's been a while since I'd classify something as a performance and not like something for work. But like I did a lot of theater and a lot of, film related things growing up. And for me, when it comes to protecting my energy, there's a couple of different buckets that I live in because when I'm facilitating, it is a connection back and forth. It's a flow of energy between you and the people that you're talking to. So I find that in the moment, I get filled with energy. And same thing kind of went for performances as well, except you don't always, connect direct with the audience. You're connecting with the other people around you. You're connecting with the source material. And you're going into a place that, again, it's interesting because it fills you with energy, but it can also drain you and exhaust you because of how powerful that energy feels. And so it's one of those things where I have to set some boundaries in my time. I have to give myself a landing space for afterwards, because no matter how powerful and amazing something might feel in the moment, the introvert of me comes out afterwards when I realize that I'm crashing energy wise. It was like you were holding the fire in your hands the whole time and it was beautiful, but if you don't stop, you're gonna get burnt. So I know like 2 weeks ago, I had like a kickoff for a big onboarding program. And after like day 4, there's so many things going on and I was using so much energy by day. And as I mentioned to both of you, I'm also in the middle of a move. So I was just like, okay, I did not save enough energy for myself. And I kind of had to just sit in the dark in the living room. And my partner just like flicked the lights off, sat in silence with me, and then ended up like, we ended up getting like a tent for me to like go in and sensory decompress in after like intense kind of, whatever it is that kind of like gives you that crash. And it was like one of those things that sometimes you want connection and sometimes you need quiet and the lights to be out and just like stillness and to just like be. So I think finding a balance between, those big moments and the time that you need to just cycle back into yourself is, very important.
That image of holding a fire in your hand. Whoo.
Valerie, one thing that probably most of the people in my church, Unity on Greenfell, didn't know, that on Sundays, after the service, after the day, I went home and crashed. And I'm not a napper, but I would literally sleep for 2 hours after. I would just go home and crash. There was nothing that I could possibly do.
Yeah. expending all of that energy and not
Yes.
only producing the service, but also connecting with all the people and the,
Mhm.
yeah.
And being fed by it too, as Lindsay so perfectly said. It is nourishing, and there's a low level of capacity to hold that.
Yeah. I wouldn't say extremely extroverted. There's no extreme to it, but I would say clearly extroverted. And I do get my energy from people, but I think, my version of holding fire in your hands, if you will, comes from that becomes the energy source for me. If I'm down, I need people around me to feed off of. Once I unplug from that energy source, I'm kind of like that, those little, what are those? The car sales lot. I'm down if I disconnect from that energy source. And there are times, I need to be on my own, especially when it comes to time. I find that if my time is really, if I'm using a lot of time and going to different activities and very scheduled, that also drains me from energy. I need freedom to just kind of do what I want and how I want it. But more than 3 days on my own, and I can be like low-key depressed if I'm just like, okay, I need people. That's important. So this is interesting. I love it that we moved the conversation and this expanded the idea of connection, and doing so not only because we were talking about this in virtual setting, but also how to fulfill ourselves, how to connect with ourselves and others with the best energy, right? With the best energy. I want to shift the conversation a little bit. And because one of the main reasons that I wanted to connect the two of you here is, I don't know, in the back of my mind, I thought, someone as a pastor who supports and advocates for LGBTQIA is probably not something I hear about all the time, right? And then Lindsay, I know you as an advocate as well, and your lived experience in that community, this might be a really fascinating conversation. But I want to start off with the fact that the two of you both use the pronouns they, them, theirs. Okay, so I want to talk about that because there might be people listening, and I imagine the two of you also want to know, what had you choose those pronouns at this point in your life? Whoever wants to start.
I love that you say as well at this point in your life, Valerie, because it's definitely for me, some of coming into embracing self and identity. I look into the future and I ask myself sometimes, like, will these be the final pronouns? Will there be others in the mix? There's some neo pronouns out there that I really resonate with, but the only reason I don't use them is because I don't think folks in general will actually be able to use them in a sentence. It's hard enough getting people to get used to using they, them, theirs, and also to use, these pronouns without, apologies, excuses, like putting more feelings pretty much out there into the process instead of just kind of just rolling with it and trying it out. So for me, coming into my identity as non-binary, I think Karen said perfectly in the very beginning, we are energy, and that is pretty much how I feel. I don't resonate with, the gender I was assigned at birth. I don't sometimes resonate with the fact that I have to like walk around in a physical form. It's very constricting some days because in the end, like, it's just like, this is just energy. This is just a consciousness. There's a great book series, I think Gideon the Ninth, where they make a reference to like, we're just consciousness like driving a skeleton. And I'm like, I feel that so hard some days. So that definitely is like, my previous pronouns did not work for me, and they, them, theirs is as good as it gets for now. And it's just like, I am. And I think it's a good acknowledgement to not focus on physically, what the form is, what people assume.
Okay, I have two quick things. You mentioned neo pronouns. What
Yes.
does that mean?
you know, as I came out of my mouth, I was like, I might have to define this. So neopronouns are pretty much like, you know, people are often used to like she and her, he and him, they and them. And the neopronouns are other pronouns that, you know, have been crafted, you know, some have been in use for, you know, decades or longer, and some could be somewhat newer. So sie, hier, hers is one set of neopronouns that I've heard most frequently. One of my friends uses he, him, his, but it's with a Y, not an I, because he, you know, is non-binary, not masculine, or not a man, but he still resonates with he and him and his, just in a way that's a little bit different than if he identified as a man. So using the Y instead. One set of neopronouns that I love dearly, and maybe when I'm like 60 or at some point in my life, I might just try to push to use more, is fae, fair, fairs, and spelled like fae, like the fae creatures. And I'm just like, there are days when that just resonates so hard. And, you know, I've heard people say with neopronouns too, it's like, oh, you're just making stuff up now. I'm like, is it really just making stuff up if somebody's been using it for like 40 years of their life? And also, why is that so bad and so difficult? Like, we make names up and we can use those. So
Oh, good point. So there are so many questions, but I'm gonna pivot to Karen in a second. You mentioned the name of a book. I want to make sure I capture that. Gideon the Ninth, you said?
Gideon the Ninth, yeah.
Giddy, like the feeling giddy?
Oh no, Gideon is the name of a character.
Gideon.
I'll shoot you a thing. It's honestly, it's just like a fun little space sci-fi fantasy lesbian necromancy romp. So there we go.
Okay, Gideon and the Ninth. I got it.
Yeah.
I like to make sure whatever books I mentioned, I put in the talk points. Wow, you said there's a lot to unpack in what you just shared. But
Yes.
Before we unpack, Karen.
Yes, you have my full attention, Lindsay. Full attention. I tried to stay current. So yeah, I do better than not, than others. For me, you know, to really honor every person, to be present to every person and how they show up on any given day, it just went so far beyond he and she. And when we started really educating our spiritual community so that we would be not just an inclusive community by our words, but an inclusive community by our actions, we had to learn how to talk with each other and in honoring ways. And then it went even further than that. You know, when we are face to face with another, we're face to face with the soul. You know, we're with that beautiful soul, and it doesn't matter what we call it. It's a soul in its perfection. And so I really worked at using pronouns that don't identify gender, that don't identify, you know, and I don't describe people by their size, by their shape, by the color of their skin. And this is a great way for me to not identify people by their gender as well, and just to really honor the soul of a person. Because none of the other stuff is important. It's just what humanity uses as constructs to separate and divide when we are in a world that's screaming for coming together.
I mean, I think I can close the close the podcast there. That kind of dropped the mic, Karen. Wow. Fascinating. You know, I think I'm just going to react to some of the things that you shared that I thought were the two of you, I think, are bringing, again, this idea of connection where we started, expanding it even further. And the notion of one, not being attached to a physical form, right? And the thought that came to mind, I was listening this morning to someone share some, they quoted or they they made reference to the Buddha, and that suffering comes from attachment, and attachment to some physical form creates suffering as well, right? And suffering in all forms, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's age, right? This is a temporary housing for the soul. And what you just shared, Karen, too, on the idea that you're meeting a soul, you're not meeting a construct of a soul, although we have these constructs to facilitate language. And, it's interesting because I think me personally, yes, I'm a woman. I feel like that's part of the housing I'm in. My frame is more about the iterations of my soul over time. I do believe in that I have been, reincarnated, if you want to put a label on it, but I do feel that my soul has been on this planet several rounds, and this is the iteration that it's in at this moment. So I don't have any attachment to that. And I've never, ever considered that I would have to shift the way I talk about it. And this moment is having me question a lot. I'm like, oh my gosh, do I have to shift how I talk about it? Because I found that to be true with race, the construct of race. And like, well, what difference does that make to say hey, this person is, has this color skin, or that person has that color skin? But what it implies and the meanings that we then attach to what we hear that usually are very, can be denigrating or can be disempowering. So you guys are messing with my brain. What?
In
a good way.
This idea of construct, it came to my mind, 2 weeks ago, I got to be with my mom. This is really a very, very positive story. As she passed from this realm to the next, and to feel her leave her body, and to know that that soul is gone for eternity. It was such an exquisite moment, a breathtaking realization of what I thought I believed, just validated that we aren't these bodies, And when she left, it was apparent that was just the casing for it, for this moment. It is just beautiful to watch that and to feel that. Yeah, you're right. This is just the bones.
I felt very similar when my grandmother passed away. Like she pretty much she said goodbye like a month prior in a way. I was like, I'll see you in a couple of months. And she said nothing. And when she passed, it was really clear, like she was just done. She had done what she needed to do. The physical body was so taxing on her. And, I still feel like I in dreams and in the moments where I just like talk out loud, like the connection is still there, like the relationship is still there. And I sometimes say out loud to like, whatever is listening, like, hey, if you are still hanging out, don't feel like you need to on my account. Like, because there's so much more, she was brilliant and just amazing. And if she wants to do anything else or be anything else in another iteration, then like, you don't have to hang out and see how this generation is doing, just keep expanding. And so, I feel deeply for you. And I'm so glad to hear that it was in that way, positive experience.
Oh gosh.
Yes.
Yeah. We aren't attached to these bodies.
No,
it's not.
Yeah. Love lives on is pretty much like forever.
Yes. Yeah.
The phrase, I wrote it down. So I'm like, the physical body is so taxing on her. That's what you said, Lindsay, about your grandmother's experience. And I wonder, as I'm thinking about the listener, right? Someone who's participating in this conversation who may not have the spiritual inclination to think of people or individuals as souls or spirit, right? I'm curious, like, what do you talk about when you're with others who may not understand or may not, I wouldn't say understand, that's really presumptuous, but who may not engage in the conversation at this level we're talking about, that people are not the bodies that they're encased in, right? That when we say people or person, that we're actually talking beyond. That's what I'm hearing from the two of you, that your interactions and your connection to others goes beyond the outer folds, right? The encasing, which can be so, it could really pose some challenges in day-to-day interactions with others, and how we describe or how we interact or how we, ascertain things about certain people. So I'm curious about, how do you manage conversations like this, like day to day?
I think that the big thing is like not to hold yourself back from what you are expressing. So if you have feelings, if you have thoughts, if you have curiosities, it's important to think of who you're talking about and respect who they are, respect their experiences. Because I think, it's one thing to say like, who I am physically or how I was socialized is not who I am deeply, but that doesn't change the fact that the way you were raised still impacts who you are in some way. How, the world perceives you still has weight, and, they're all part of our experience. So, I may think something and I'm not ever forcing my view on somebody else, but I would willingly have a conversation. And I also, right now, I'm a big fan of not minimizing, not kind of holding back what you think, how you feel, just for the sake of making someone else comfortable. If they don't, agree, with an identity, I think is the one thing. It's like, you can disagree on, your own personal opinions on things, but every time I hear the words agree to disagree, and it has to do with someone's identity, I'm like, no, because you are not actually agreeing on something, and your feelings about somebody will never eradicate who they are, or what they need. So it's like that line of just like, being open, talking the same way I'm talking right now. And if someone doesn't, seem to be on the same wavelength, it's like, okay, take the conversation deeper. If they seem interested, go there. If it feels safe to go there. If the conversation doesn't feel safe because somebody either, doesn't want to try and understand a perspective, or, they just don't get it, that's fine. But I think the big thing is like, you have to keep safe space for, just not going down that rabbit hole of trying to, explain something or trying to force your view on somebody else. But like, you can't wipe out who somebody is. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at.
For me, I realized a very, very long time ago, because Lindsay, I'm way over 60. So I realized a long time ago that, I don't have a responsibility to change somebody else's mind. People can stay in their line of thinking and experience the pain and suffering of that thinking as long as they choose, or they can lift their thinking, change their thinking, and experience the joy and freedom of their thinking. Listening to someone in the beginning of a conversation will often tell you exactly where you can take a conversation, what is safe, what is able to be spoken about, and still honor that person. Because I don't have a desire to change their mind. They have come to their opinions and conclusions the same way I have come to mine, by reading, by experiencing, by feeling. And I don't want someone to try to change my mind when I've clearly come to my opinion. And so I don't have an obligation to change their mind. If we can have dialogue around any topic without oppressing the other person, that's great, and that's wonderful. And that's as far as I'll go, as long as it's a It's not name calling or finger pointing and things like that. We can talk forever about any topic.
You know, Karen, when you said at the very outset of a conversation, you know, how safe or how much you can go into whatever subject with that individual. Can you give an example? I mean, you as a minister interact with so many different people, and likely I would imagine, especially in your function, some fairly intimate or deep topics. So maybe, I don't know if that space is any different than when you're interacting with people at a grocery store, at a bank or something, but I'm curious about what has been the experience where you identify that, okay, this is a safe conversation to get into, or no, this is not.
Well, we just push a little bit, push against and when resistance comes back, I know to soften. Just push it a little further and test it a little more, and you can know when to stop. And then there's things, and there's conversations that, well, we're just going to blow this out of the water, and we're just going to push it for all it's worth and let the pieces fall where they may. And some of those conversations happen too. Not with strangers, sometimes with family or close friends when there's, a lot going on. We just push it till there's nothing left.
Push it till there's nothing left.
Agree to honor and respect each other.
Yeah.
Agree to honor and respect each other.
It sounds much more empowering.
Replacement. Yes.
Yeah. Agree to love and respect each other. All right. Karen, you have some questions for Lindsay as well. So what questions would you like to throw into the mix?
Yeah. Thinking back to the first time you felt a need to stand out of your comfort zone and to stand up for someone else. Just say you got past that first hesitation, be it fear or just hesitation. What happened and what did you feel after you took a stand for somebody else?
I love that focus on, when you're taking a stand for somebody else. I find that it's a lot easier sometimes, often, I don't know, to advocate for other people instead of self. And so, there's a lot more discomfort. There's a lot more, not standing up that I'll take. But when it comes to either, definitely people that are close to me, and then also just general, folks out there that are uncomfortable, it's very hard to sit there and watch something bad happen to them. And like the first time, I definitely, it would have to be, as a kid, I was a very, I'll say, solitary, a very quirky child. So I tended to have like maybe one friend at a time, and a couple maybe of acquaintances, just that like I was socialized with. But with that, like I definitely felt that otherness, that loneliness. And so seeing somebody else get picked on for similar things, it was much easier to make a biting comments of like, leave them alone, or that's not weird. And it's interesting because I feel like that also carries through to today all the time now, like just, the empowerment of acknowledging, what you are saying to this person isn't, it isn't accurate. Like they're not weird. They shouldn't feel shame. They shouldn't feel other. When will that sink into the self as well, is a curious question, I think. And that's something I guess I come back to a lot. It's like, you will till the end of time be like, no, like do not put someone down. Do not, make someone feel bad for who they are or what makes them different. And look in the mirror, because you have to apply that there too, I think is kind of what comes back at me all the time.
So advocating for others seems to be a more comfortable space for you to occupy than advocating for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Working on it, but it's something that I think in the past few years, especially, like I've really become aware of. I think my one friend always jokes it's the Pisces in me.
Mm. You know, what's so interesting, I think, as I think about that question too, I've found I haven't, at least from what I can recall, and I mean, others who know me well might be able to say something different, but I feel that my advocacy has less to do with speaking out about another person readily and more about understanding a person. I've always been okay, this person is clearly doing something or experiencing something or expressing something that is controversial right now, or that is not appropriate, or whatever it is. Let me understand where they're coming from. And once I understand the person, then I'm more able to advocate for them, right? Because, I think about it in terms like even my family. I wouldn't call it a peacemaker necessarily, because sometimes I like to stir the pot too, but I do learn things about family members that most people don't know. And so when someone makes an assumption or some sort of judgment, or there's some conflict or some tension, I find myself helping diffuse it by saying, well, one thing you should consider is that this person did XYZ, or this person is considering X, right? So I have some frame of reference that I can offer. And I don't think I was ever clear and able to articulate that until this question.
Wow.
I do it so instinctively, but I don't think I ever considered it being advocacy, because I think of it in terms of like really like fighting and standing up and just being really confrontational. And I'm like, no, I think mine's a little softer. My approach comes kind of on the side, just like, okay, let me understand this person. And then I can provide other people with some context, right? That hopefully shifts their interaction or hopefully shifts their perception. So thank you for that. That was really rewarding.
Well, I'm happy to oblige. Yeah.
Yeah. How would you answer that, Karen?
Oh gosh, in my family, I'm still known as the one that'll, don't mess with my family. Don't mess with people that I love and care about. And this goes back all the way to elementary school. Somebody was punching my younger sister, and I beat them up royally. And then, of course, was terrified when the mother of the boy came and asked, who hit my son? And my mother made me own it, And then I thought, man, there's power in that. Owning, and there's power in people knowing that you're going to have their back. Now, I don't punch anybody. I don't beat anybody up with my hands or with my words. No, I work hard at not doing that. So, but at the same time, knowing that there are people walking this earth that know that I'm going to have their back. I'm not going to just sit quietly while something horrible happens to them. We'll take a gentler approach than a punch, but I'll still do it. Yeah, I'll still stand up for someone. And it used to be just not participating in gossip or just not participating. And then it used to be walking away when it happened to not participate. And then it became, no, we're gonna cease this.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna stop. Yeah. Be more vocal about it. Yeah.
I want to bring in the idea of advocating for oneself, and I'm curious about, both of you seem to be in your own ways very like warriors, right, for other people. And so, and Lindsay, you kind of alluded to this, that you're still working on expanding that same approach to you. So how has, for the two of you, how has that shifted in your lives as you've matured, or if you've seen and experienced other things? How has your expansion of advocating for yourself shifted?
Oh gosh, it comes with knowing what I want and need and desire and will accept.
Mm-hmm.
Socialized and conditioned to take whatever and make the best of it. doesn't exist for me anymore. So it was, a metamorphosis of, no, that's not okay, or this behavior is not towards me is not okay anymore, because this is what I expect in relationship. So it was a really internal educational process of deciding what I wanted and what I will be willing to receive, and setting that clearly. And when it's not that, I can just give the anger, the harshness, I can just return it to the person, literally hand it back to them. And that's come with age.
Mm. I want you to say more about that. Handing back to them the anger. Say more about that.
Sometimes I've said, I can feel that you're really angry. That's not what's moving in me. And so I'm going to give that back to you. And sometimes it's just been the verbal, and sometimes it's been literally taking my cupped hands and handing it back to them as a visual. I'm not going to receive your anger. It feels misplaced. And so I'm going to return it to you. And then you can do with that anger what you need to do with it. Yeah.
That's really, so it sounds like for you, advocacy has been really getting clear on who you are, what you need, what you want, being able to articulate it, and whatever response you get, if it doesn't align with what you want, need, and express, you can just return to sender.
Yes. Yes. That. Yeah. That did not happen overnight. And I'm pretty certain there's still room for growth in that. Yes.
What are you reflecting on there with that, Lindsay?
I'm just like, I definitely resonate with, part of, advocating for self and all of these things is first like establishing what is self, and then letting things in is a lot of times, like accepting someone's anger, accepting someone's perception. A lot of that is kind of weight that can hold you down. And I've reached a point, I think, with the role models in my life where I don't accept anger in the sense that if someone, raises their voice or is hostile towards me, I'll get myself into a safe position, but I will not respond back. I will not rise to the challenge. I am like one of the least competitive people you'll ever meet. So if someone is just trying to one-up me, I pretty much am just like, this doesn't matter to me, so you can win. Have fun with that. It's kind of, like it
That's
doesn't
so
need to
cool.
go in.
Have fun with that.
Yeah. But like, I think that the biggest, growing into that self and that, advocacy, some of it's about what do you let in? And then some of it, for me, I think a lot of it for me is what do I let out? Because it was very easy for me to have feelings or knowledge or beliefs, experiences, and keep them to myself and share them with no one. Keep my words to myself, keep my feelings to myself. And as I get older, the thing that I challenge myself to do is to not just bottle it up, to express it. It's easy to share with people that feel safe, and it's easy to share with friends or new acquaintances that are, either on the same wavelength or curious in a safe and positive way. And it's difficult to share with people who already have their perceptions set, especially perceptions around who I am, or who don't want to change their way of looking at the world, the way that they, the efforts they make, kind of going back to like changing the language that, your congregation uses in talking to people. Like, there is an element of effort that goes into interactions. And it's hard to push against if someone doesn't want to make the effort. So pretty much at this point, I think the biggest thing I can do is just be honest, be as open as possible, and try not to be scared about how vulnerable that is. Try not to be scared about how it will be received, because, you can't control other people's, feelings, other people's reactions. And I guess at that point, it's just like, okay, then at least I don't want to keep it trapped or bottle up any of it. So just like the next step after, is just putting it out there.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind is that the two of you have created yourselves to be safe people to share with, right? In the interactions that you have with others. It sounds like the idea of advocating for yourself requires there to be a safe space. Karen, maybe for you, not so much. You're like, I don't care. That's yours, not mine. And Lindsay, you could probably just like, yeah, go have fun. And it sounds like you may walk away with some of those things. But I guess I'm curious now is, how do you, not knowing whether the space is safe or the other person is safe or the other people are safe, how do you generate a safe space for yourself? Because there's kind of like this, maybe I'm missing it, but there's seems to be inherent in what the two of you are saying. There's this level of safety that one must create for themselves to be expressive, or to be able to walk away, or to be able to push back. So how do you create that if you don't already inherently see it or experience it?
Make yourself vulnerable. Walk into a room, be honest. Don't hold yourself back, and be aware that it makes you vulnerable. And that if you misgauged a situation, and you misgauged the energy or the people in the room, that it's about to get real uncomfortable. And get yourself out of it if you can, or find yourself allies. That's another huge one. And I think honestly, like, having allies in a space is the difference between speaking and just being silent a lot of the time. Because if you can't tell, you don't know who's here, having somebody else in there that makes you feel safe is extremely important. And like, with, when we talked about like advocacy for others, I think that's like the main thing, just being there for other people and being that, person who will have their back is what I offer. Because a lot of the times, like, if I don't have that when I walk into the room, I'm probably going to be quiet, or I'm going to be super uncomfortable. And those are my two options.
Quiet or uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Oh.
Ditto. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And we can do a lot internally to, I am, you said that earlier. Wow, that hit me. We can stay in our I am and all that's true for us. And we can hold that inside so that we don't crumble. And if we gauge that space to not be safe, yes, I'm going to be quiet. I'm not going to stir up things, but I can be safe within myself because I know who and what I am. I know,
So safe for yourself would be just being really grounded and centered in who you are
and taking charge of what I'm thinking, those energetic thoughts, and not allowing fear to consume, and just, yeah.
Can you give an example, Karen, of that?
Being mindful. So yes, if I recognize that I'm in a space that's uncomfortable, and I feel threatened or fearful, I can just affirm to myself, say it, in my mind, I am safe, I am whole, I am. All those things I know about me.
Okay. Affirming it.
Yes, affirming it and allowing my energy of love to expand. Because I know that might sound just corny to some people, but I have living proof that our energy of love impacts and shifts the energy of a room, of a space, of any space. Sitting on an airplane, not too long ago, and the man next to me was escalating because he had the last seat. We had the last seats in the plane. They didn't recline or anything, and he's escalating. Was a large man, comparably to the flight attendant and myself. And so I just kept having thoughts of love and didn't just send him forward, send him left to his direction, and just sat. And it was about a 5-minute exchange. And all of a sudden, he just calmed down.
Wow.
So I know our energy can shift all of that. So if I'm confident in this power of love and I'm emanating love into the room, I can shift whatever's happening.
Wow.
Not to be too corny, but it happens.
That's powerful. That was not corny at all. It reminds me of A Course in Miracles, the spiritual book, and it talks about everything that we do or say is either offering love or asking for love. Like really boiled down to an essence. And so this gentleman could be potentially, as he was escalating, he had a need for love. But, like in nonviolent communication, we often start off with the strategy. Like, this is how I want my need to be met, rather than asking or requesting the need. I need safety. I need space. I need freedom. I need to be heard. We say, I want you to change my seat. Or, we say whatever the strategy is rather than the need. And it sounds like energetically you were able to pour love into him, which is what he was requesting.
Because I could easily become excitable in that. I could feel nervous and anxious. And as soon as I started feeling my feelings rise, I said, oh, no. I'm going to contribute this. And I started working. And, we walk into a room and we feel that downer. We feel that person that's crotchety and cranky. The room feels our love too.
Woo.
I think taking a page from that is a good idea. I know, there's a few responses, and one is that fight or flight. And I am more likely, if I feel unsafe or uncomfortable, to start going towards disassociating from the situation. And, that's just bubbling up, anxiety that I will process later as I step out of the moment and I step into just a gray space of, okay, we're just going to not process. We're just going to just breathe a bit, but we're just not here. And something that I tend to do afterwards when I'm trying to then de-escalate what's going on inside of me is then to, meditate, breathe. And a lot of that meditation, when I'm feeling grounded in self, there's grounded in myself, and then there's connecting with others in that positive way. And one of the things, one of my frequent mantras is the green washes through from my heart to you. And I just repeat that over and over, and just until it's just connection flowing in and out, just, that resonance between, people and love and connection. And I just let it wash out what was there before. And I feel like probably instead of disassociating in a moment, it might benefit to just go there first, as opposed to waiting until later when I'm de-escalating the anxiety. So holding that space for love, holding that space for connection at the point in time when it is uncomfortable, if someone is receptive to that, if someone also picks up on what you're putting out there and cycling out there, that could have a very positive in the moment to change. And either it'll change what's inside, or maybe it will have an actual impact on the world outside.
This conversation has been so fun. So at this point, I'd love to just kind of shift there's so much expansion here, but I'm like, okay, we're almost done with time. So I'm gonna have to bring it in. I'm curious about your experience. First of all, having met each other on a podcast, share with us, what's it been like?
My gosh, it's been so fun to hear you, Lindsay. You've opened doors for new things for me to learn and to experience. And you've been just so kind and gentle and open and vulnerable. So it's delightful to be here with you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an absolute delight. Honestly, that is the exact word that is like ringing in my mind. It's really, wonderful to be in your presence. I'll say, even just like this, the feeling of just like the conversation and being here is so warm and so lovely. And it's also really exciting always to meet other folks that, are part of the LGBTQI plus community, who are, I find like we're all at different points in life. And every time I meet somebody who is either further in having embraced their identity, no matter what age they are, just they're further along in knowing who they are, or have, been part of the community in any way. It's good. It's powerful. It's a reminder of not being alone, and that no matter who you are in life as well, it's never too late to embrace who you are. And no matter, I did not expect when Valerie said a reverend that I'd be hanging out with somebody else with they, them pronouns. And I'm super excited. I'm like, that's awesome. I can't wait to share this with the other MDs I know.
I don't know. That's it. People sometimes feel intimidated by that, but I don't feel that.
Yeah, no, it's so good. It's just like super rewarding. It's just like, seeing the representation matters is just like such a powerful thing. And just seeing people, throughout the world, people you wouldn't expect, or people that, aren't exactly the same as you. It's just like, there are more of us out there and you are not alone. And we don't know as well, like, if somebody feels alone right now and they haven't met that person that shares any of their experience, that doesn't mean that they're not out there. They just might not have a chance to have met them yet.
So true. It sounds like everyone should be referred to as they, them, theirs then. I mean, considering the conversation we've had about the soul being really the key to all interaction and true connection. I'd love for the two of you to challenge our audience, because I think this is a really ripe topic or area. We've talked about so many things. We've talked about identity. We've talked about safety. We've talked about energy. We've talked about love. Like, what would you like to say to the audience to challenge them in applying any of the things that we've shared in their own lives?
Gosh. Oh, I just had a flash, most cities have an organization called PFLAG. PFLAG.org, and every single person to connect with PFLAG in their community and to learn some things. There's speakers that they have, there's activities, you'll learn about legislation that's on the dockets. Connect and learn something new that would support and honor the LGBTQ plus community.
Got it. PFLAG, PFLAG.org, you said?
.org.
PFLAG. Yes. Okay, so connect and support LGBTQIA plus community. Lindsay, what challenge would you extend?
I would say consider that shift in vocabulary. Like that observation you just have, like everybody could, default to they, them until someone tells you who they are. You could still be misgendering somebody, but the chances are, then they can correct you. If they tell you their pronouns are whatever they are, you use what pronouns they give you. Like that's who they identify, like they've told you they are. And, challenge that idea that the default is I visually see you and I clock you as this or that, so I get to choose. They, in my opinion, is the term that happens when you don't know, you haven't met somebody yet. So you don't know who's coming on the call. If you said that I was going to be meeting Reverend K, I'd have no idea before we got here. So I'm going to be using they, them until I'm told otherwise. And I think, practicing that individual they this is a person who hasn't told me who they are yet. They are someone that I look forward to meeting, and they are somebody that I will find out what their pronouns are. I will find out who they are, and I'll find out what matters to them. But I'm not going to assume like who they are until it's established. So, and it's a muscle memory. So getting it into your vocabulary about people you haven't met yet, or people you haven't had that conversation yet, helps you practice it so that when you meet somebody and that actually is their pronouns, you're already pretty used to it. The muscle's still working there. So that's also just a nice side effect of just not making that assumption when you first meet people.
It's kind of like the name, right? We don't assume people's names until we've learned them. We don't call somebody name. We don't call anybody Robin. You're Robin until you tell me otherwise. We don't do that.
That's like super. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I don't know who you are, so I'm just going to call you Bob. It's like, that's super awkward and uncomfortable. Don't do that.
Fascinating.
Yeah, great way to add levity to that. Valerie, thank you.
Do what I can. I do what I can. And actually, Lindsay's been a great teacher, because I think you're the first person, non-binary person, that actually had a conversation with, a meaningful conversation about this. And it really did challenge me to start thinking differently. And not only thinking about pronouns, I think that's one piece of it, but I think you've expanded through this conversation just what identity is. Specifically, I think what was challenged for me was that everything in the space of LGBTQ had to do with sexuality. So actually what you're bringing to this conversation, what both of you are bringing to this conversation, that actually has nothing to do with sexuality per se. It's really just about the soul of a human being and how we identify and classify or not.
Yeah, that's a whole other hour discussion.
Sorry, let's put a pin in that. That'll go on the parking lot. Parking lot of ideas.
Okay.
Any final words for the audience or for one another before we close?
Lindsay, thank you. Thank you for being present, for being willing. Valerie, thank you for the invitation. Yes.
Yeah, thank you both. This has been an absolute delight. It's been wonderful talking with you. And I'm also taking away just a lot of really inspirational words. So super exciting to meet you.
Yes,
and Valerie, it's good to see you.
Oh, for the both of you, I'm so grateful that we were able to have such an enlightening, light, deep conversation in just a short period of time. And this is what this podcast is about, is to really inspire people to go beyond the surface. Look how deep we were able to go with us, the two of you were able to go with a stranger. And I know, and I get that I created a container for that conversation, but I think that the tools and the experiences that the two of you have shared could really empower someone to create that safe container for themselves, right? And extend that container to other people. So I'm so grateful for what you shared with us and the difference that's going to make. We will never know the difference is made, but it will have implanted into someone's brain and hopefully activated in some way. So thank you too for this time and your generosity and your care. And for those of you who've tuned in today, thank you also for sharing this hour with us. I hope that you're taking something away. There are some challenges in our conversation, so I challenge you to take those on, and we'll make sure that we remind you of any resources in the speaker notes. So for now, I'm going to sign off. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
You've been listening to the podcast Not Quite Strangers. Be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite video or podcast platform. And for more information and content, go to notquitestrangers.com. See you next time.